Hello, everyone, and welcome back to DragonCon Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial. Uh, we are doing our next panel in the series of many, many digital panels we've done over the years. Stage Parents 101 Nurturing Your Young Performer. I'm joined as always by the amazing Gary.
Hi, everybody.
And of course, I'm Sarah Rose, the stage manager of the chaos. Because what is theater if not chaos? Um, I would love if all of the panelists would introduce themselves, starting with you, Katrina.
Sure. My name's Katrina Levitt. I'm going to be the oddity on this panel in that I am not a parent, but I was at one point a young performer, and I work with young performers in regional theater in New York. I run, work with them both film and theater. I run a regional youth theater program every summer, and I work extensively with youth programs in a local ballet company and a few regional theaters.
Awesome. And Greg.
Hi, I am Greg Bell. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I came to the performing world via music. I started as a musician, then fell into stage work and directing. At one point, though, when I was a younger man, prior to becoming a parent myself, I actually was the manager of a children's theater out of a local dinner theater here in Maryland that's since closed. And that then translated when the theater closed, we became the Children's Playhouse of Maryland. I worked their box office for many years and then got married and had a bunch of kids. And now my kids all work out of the Children's Playhouse of Maryland because they've been going strong for, I think this is their 22nd year now because I'm old.
Mhm.
Um, so I come from a lot of different angles where I started as a young musician, as a performer, and then, of course, now as a director, performer myself who's guiding young players through the bog that is theatrical performance.
And Charles.
Hello, all. I am Charles Pillsbury. I'm a parent to theater kids who range from 7 to 27 years old.
Ooh.
The 27-year-old is the one who started it and has passed it down to all the little siblings. And now they are obviously grown and out of the house and not actually involved in the theater as much these days. And my wife is also a director and educator. And so for 15 to 20 years, I've been building sets and I have been making costumes. I am a puppeteer as well. And so I do a lot of puppetry work. And right now, my 7-year-old is on his way home from rehearsal in a production that my wife is directing. And my 19-year-old daughter and I have spent the last couple of months going through flying up to Chicago for Unifieds and getting applications into colleges. So we're the gamut of ages. So that's
Definitely.
me.
Well, we do have one more panelist. He is actually running late from a rehearsal for theater because the theater never stops,
Nope.
and
The
we
show
know
must
how
go
that
on.
all is. So he will be joining us shortly, and of course we'll let him introduce himself when he does. But Gary, did you want to start with the first question?
Absolutely. So we like it to always, as always, start with a getting to know you, everybody. So we got that out of the way. Um, so I will go in reverse order, starting with Charles, asking you what brings you to this panel on nurturing young performers. Why does this? I'm assuming as a parent it speaks to you, but is there other reasons?
It does, partially because when I was in high school, I was in what was our drama club, and theater was not something that had been nurtured in me. And I think one of the main reasons that I got involved with it, I was very interested. I have a big sister who's a couple years older who had gotten involved in theater in college. And so for me, it was a thing I really enjoyed. And once I became a parent, it was one of those things that kind of didn't get to do for a while until
Mm.
somebody got old enough that they were really interested in it. And the school where my wife was teaching at the time was very heavily involved in theatrical arts. And so I think the first production was an Alice in Wonderland, and my eldest was a White Rabbit.
Mm.
And it was, it has kind of continued on from there. Kid number two has done a lot of theater, but really dove into being backstage, being stage manager. And as my wife was directing a lot of those shows, my job was usually to try and help realize that vision to, by building out sets and designing things for her, and telling her no when the vision was bigger than our budget or my ability, or
Mm.
both. Um, and so for me, it was what I didn't have when I was younger, but then also really just loving to see how much it has bloomed for my kids. One of my absolute favorite memories is that my eldest and I got to be on stage together in a community theater production
Mm.
while they were in college, and I've gotten to be on stage with my daughter in another community theater production, my 19-year-old, several years ago. It's just it is such a great experience to do with them, but also just seeing how they thrive and how much it brings to them is why I was. And
Mm.
because I'm going through all the college stuff, I feel like I'm getting all the way through the range of parenting on
And because
Indeed.
Sarah said, you'd be good for this panel. Will you do this panel?
it. That's it.
Yes. All right, Jake, welcome aboard. We're going to put you on the spot. Go ahead and
Okay.
introduce yourself to everybody, and I'll follow up that same question with you.
I don't know if
Okay.
he heard the
Uh,
question.
my
I'll repeat it.
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Uh, my name is Jake Dreiling. I am a theater teacher, high school theater teacher. I've been doing that this is my 26th year of teaching theater. I teach in Atlanta, Georgia here. I'm literally in my classroom right now because we just finished a performance
Nice.
this evening. So, like, people just left about 5 minutes ago, and I set up this, and that's why I'm late. So I apologize for not being here on time, but that's that's how it went tonight.
Uh,
Yeah.
we'll make you put
What else do I
$5
need?
in the late jar.
Awesome.
A
I'm
fine
down for
theater
that.
tradition.
Hmm.
There you go. There
There
it
we
is.
go.
There's my pantomime. Okay. So, what was the question that I
What
missed?
brings you to the panel? What is it about nurturing young performers that brought you to this panel that made you interested in doing it?
Well, I mean, it's kind of my job. That's what I do for a living all day. I mean, obviously, I have been here since what it was 8 in the morning, and I'm still
Mm.
here. Oh yeah, past 12 hours. Doing theater all day. So I mean, as far as theater and young performers, it's just my bread and butter. So that's one of the major reasons why I came, just to help, you know, give some things I've learned along the way.
All right.
Well,
All right. And how about you down there?
Is that me that you're pointing to? Because on my screen it's Charles.
Oh, on mine it's Miss Level. So
Okay, very good.
mhm.
Love it.
Me?
Yes,
yes,
you.
Oh, okay.
that's
Although
what I get for trying to be clever.
sorry. So I was lucky enough as a young adult to be enrolled in a local magnet program in San Diego where I grew up for performing arts. So um, as part of my curriculum, I majored in dance and performance.
Mm.
And so I had a love for it, from an early age. And I had a lot of very influential mentors that I worked with in the theater there, and also when I came out to New York for college. And then, as I was looking at, how I wanted to spend my free time, I just wanted the ability to share that with the next generation, that joy that I found in performing. So, like I said, I spent a lot of time working on nurturing the next generation of performers and just trying to make a safe and welcoming space for that next generation to find that passion and that joy, either on stage performing, backstage, sewing, painting, what have you. You know, there's so many aspects that, you know, we try and encourage. So,
Okay. Uh, Sarah.
Well, I don't know if I'm an expert on nurturing the panel for nurturing.
But it was your
But
idea, so why did it?
it
What is it that appealed to you as an idea?
the reason it appealed to me is you have so many people who are child performers who end up burning out on it or end up saying, well, I felt forced into this or something
Hmm.
like that. Um, and I think that that kind of thing can um, be prevented from a young age if parents know how to nurture a child's interest or take cues that, I'm going to be honest, sometimes I, as a kid, wasn't great at communicating with um, from a young age, so that not only can they continue to enjoy things when they're a child, but also can continue to enjoy or appreciate um, being a performer later on in life.
Right. And how about you, Greg?
Well, like I said, I came into performing music when I was very young. I started playing out professionally when I was like a freshman in high school. Um, and then as fell into theater, like the first show I actually ever did uh, on a dare was Annie. They always
Mm.
say don't work with animals or kids. And the first scene I ever did was with Annie and the dog. So, and as a dumb bass player, I flummoxed my way through it as best I could. But I saw a lot of good kids in there. And then as I fell into like the dinner theater scene in Maryland, there's always a children's theater, of course, and
Mm.
those kids were great, and they would become the adults on stage with us eventually. And I always felt it was just good to keep. Uh, yeah, to keep them excited, like to keep kids excited about the act of acting.
Hmm.
Um, and then as I got even older, because I again am very old, I had kids. I had kids of my own. My wife had a daughter when we married, and I adopted her when she was young, and she wasn't interested in performing per se. She sometimes would be, and sometimes wouldn't be. And then we had three kids together as well. 18. My oldest is actually 29. Then we have an 18-year-old, 15-year-old, and a 14-year-old.
Mm.
And the 18-year-old and the 14-year-old love to perform. And the 15-year-old would rather chew off his own hand than ever even go see a play, let alone be put on the stage. So we would never make Nathan do that ever. Whereas like my 18-year-old is Xander's coming back from the Wizard of Oz rehearsal tonight, where he's playing the Scarecrow, and his younger sibling Mars is with him, and they're helping out with wigs and makeup because they couldn't do this show because they're doing Beetlejuice Junior at their school, so they're doing double duty. But um, as they grew up, as their kids, the first show we ever got them to be in was Seussical, and a friend of ours was
Mm.
directing it, and the kids didn't have a great time. And they didn't have a great time, not because of the director or the production team. They were great, but there was some adults in the show that didn't necessarily want to be in a show with a bunch of kids. And one of them particularly was a little harsh with my young son Xander,
Mm.
and Xander said flat out he never wanted to perform again. And so he didn't. We didn't make him, of course. And then 10th grade, he had just seen we had moved to a new district. He saw Les Mis at his school, and he was like, I kind of like those kids. And I was like, you should audition for the play, and it's Peter and the Starcatcher. You could be Ted or Peter or Blackstash or any of these guys. And so we worked on it, and he went and he got Ted, and he was very excited about that, and he was bit, and he started doing like everything he could whenever he could. But as a theater maker, I also utilized my children for my own stuff.
Hmm.
to keep them creative. It wasn't like I wasn't gonna push them on stage and be like tap dance there, baby June. That wasn't it. It was like when I directed God of Carnage, I had Xander draw the poster, and it was all over Baltimore, and he would go into places, and there was his art, and that was cool. And when like we did like things like Mars was little, and I'd put them on, like I'd make them be like the pictures in the background, that kind of stuff, to keep them interested. And Mars has been interested in theater forever, so nurturing them is easier because they're very passionate about it. Whereas Xander still kind of is figuring out his cult legs because he was so turned off because of a really bad experience with a really grouchy old guy. And so as they developed, the biggest thing is that I wanted to make sure was that they didn't feel that again, because it's a play, so you should play. It's music that you play. You don't work music, you play music. It should be fun. And I'm not saying it's not work. I'm not saying it's not hard work. I'm saying that if it's not fun, then don't.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I never want them to ever feel like they can't say this got no fun. Like if they make the commitment, they know the rule. If you say yes, you got to do the show, even if it takes a left turn. But I want to make sure that if that happens too, as a parent, that I'm there to help them. You really figure out like how to find the fun, because that's the
Mhm.
key always. Like I'm not going to say they've had great directors ever since then. Some of the guys they work with in school are hit or miss, um, but overall they always are able to dig in and find the fun, so that that passion stays. Xander's about to graduate. He's going to go to school for music. Mars is just auditioned for the Magnet Schools local. They're very hyped about it. Nathan, once again, I have to pay him to go see his siblings in shows. Um, I really do. That's not a lie. But it's just finding what they like and really helping them bring it to the fore and continue to enjoy it. Because if it becomes a burden, then they shouldn't anymore. So,
Mhm. So that actually ties really well into my next question for you. And so, Greg, we're going to stick with you. I wanted to know, how can parents help their child decide if they truly want to pursue the performing arts? And what should the child as well as the parent consider before getting into this massive world? Um,
well, I would say that as a performer myself, and my
mhm,
wife and I both, we met doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We've been doing theater and shadow casting and everything for together for over 20 years. That's how long we've been together. Um, so we had a very good idea of what it takes to put on a show. Like we
mhm,
know that sometimes, especially in community theater, you're not going to have a costume. You're going to have to go buy your khakis at the Target like everybody else. You're going to have to, shell out a little money. You might have to buy a wig on Amazon, things like that. Those are things to consider, but also time, because
mm,
like while sports require time, they do. They're usually a very finite time, whereas theater, a rehearsal might run late, a rehearsal might end
mhm,
early, and they don't drive, so you better be there to pick them up. Like those types of things as a parent are very important to consider, because they're little and they need you to be there.
mhm,
As far as helping them figure out if it's for them, ultimately, I think the best thing that, and this is again my personal journey, so everybody else's journey is going to be theirs. Every area is different. Every kid is different. Every theater company is different. You've just got to ask yourself a couple of quick questions. I always say is this worth the journey from audition to closing? Is it worth it?
mhm,
um and if it's not, and because sometimes it's not, like if you've got your heart set on playing, the lead, and you get ensemble, maybe it's not what you want to be there for, because it's a big time commitment, and if you grow frustrated, then it's no fun.
mhm,
You want to talk to the people that run the establishments, because these are kids, and because they're kids, you want to make sure you like the people who run the Children's Playhouse of Maryland. Like I said, I've known them for 35 years. Like I actually used to babysit the producer's kid when I was in my 20s. Like I've known them forever. Nicole's pushing 30 herself now.
mhm,
Knowing those people like I did, it was an easy leap. But other theater companies where like we've brought our kids into stuff, we had to get to know people. We had to connect with them. And again, luckily, being performers, we know a lot of people. So if we don't know the people involved directly, we can ask the questions, check out the reviews, make sure that the people are saying that it was a great experience for their kid, because it will probably be a great experience for your kid too. And then the other question you want to ask is this piece going to bring them joy? Because if your kid isn't having fun, nobody's having fun. Okay,
Mhm.
because they're like they control the temperature of the house. Like I might have my finger on the thermostat, but they've got their finger on the mood and the vibe. And when it's been a rough day at rehearsal, it's a rough day in the house. So you've got to take the good with the bad, and you've got to sit down and give them space so that they can process their stuff. But ultimately, like if you're putting them in an environment where like last year, my youngest did the school play and hated every second of it in seventh
Mhm.
grade, and it just they didn't like the role they had, they didn't like the teachers that were doing it, they would call them to rehearsal unnecessarily, like all of these unnecessary things, and they could have gone to the playhouse and done a different show with their friends and had
Sure.
fun. And they like to this day, it's been over a year, and they're like, I really wish that I had opted not to do the school show in favor of the local theater because it would
Mhm.
have been a better experience. And trust me, it would have been a better experience for me too, because that Willy Wonka was a rough go. Um,
Mhm.
not for the kids, not for anything. It just was like every day, verge of tears every day. And
Mhm.
um, and that's the best thing I can say is just if, especially when they're young, like if they want to pursue it, y- ask all the questions you can. My parents didn't understand anything about the arts because my sister was sports, I was arts. They wouldn't put money in me, they wouldn't put training in me, and
Mhm.
I had to do everything myself. And with my kids, I was like, I'll do anything you want. If you need something, you got it. And if I don't know it, I probably know somebody who does. Let's get them in. Like I can't build for shit, Charles. Like I'm terrible at it. But I can 100% call like 15 TDs right now and be like, "Hey kid, come over here. We're going to teach you how to build some stairs." And that's a thing that can happen. And that's what's made it enjoyable for my kids. And listening when the kids also say, "I don't want to do it."
Mhm. Definitely. Jake, you're a teacher. So what do you think? Like, obviously you see the other side of it,
Yeah.
not the parent part of it.
Well, I mean, I do have kids too, but they're not.
Mhm.
I had one last year that experimented and was in Annie and hated it. So I don't think he's
I
going to try.
hated Annie too, so I think
Yeah.
we, you know.
Well, I mean, it was an elementary school production, and they did what they could, and it was fine.
Mm.
Yeah, we enjoyed it, but
Mhm.
I think the problem was it was funny. I'll tell you the quick story about that. He went out for it. He's like, I'll do the play. And as he came back after the audition, I was like, "How'd it go?" And he goes, I did fine. I got a part." And I was like, "Oh, what part did you get?" And he goes, "Daddy Warbucks." And I was like,
Oh.
"Oh, that's great, man. That's like a really good character." He's like, "I was the only guy." And I was like, "Oh,
Ooh.
Default casting.
yeah."
Oh.
It does happen sometimes, man. It's okay. And he did great at it. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think he wanted to do something with some other. But back to your question, I digressed there a little bit. Um, uh, what do you? So your question, Sarah, is just like the other side of it. What do you mean, like as far
Well,
as?
you can answer it as a parent as well, for sure. But
Yeah,
like, how can a parent help their child decide how if they truly
oh,
want to be in the performing arts? And um,
right.
as a parent, as a teacher, while making that decision, what should they consider when making that
So
decision?
yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak for all the arts, but obviously for theater or film or anything like that, I think one of the nice things about theater is that you can jump in day one with very little experience at all and get started. And I think that's one of the nice things about this particular discipline is that you don't have to like buy an instrument before you do it, or you don't have to, I mean, you can just start. You can just show up and begin, and you can have nothing and still do theater, which is really cool. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's one of the best parts. I guess my advice always is to just try it,
Mhm.
and but always understand, that at least for my students, when we talk about this, sometimes they'll come and they'll do a class, and then at the end of the year they'll say, this really wasn't for me. I don't think I'm gonna do theater anymore. And they always come up to me like they're breaking up with me, like, oh, it's not you, it's me, and I always tell them it's completely fine. I think
Mhm.
the really important thing is to make sure, like Greg was saying, find a place that's nurturing and not toxic when it
Mhm.
comes to any arts, right? But
Mhm.
if you have a place that's like very, welcoming and also really cool with you being like, I just want to dabble and just
Mhm.
see if this is for me. And I
Mhm.
think you need to make sure, again, as an educator, you have to make sure that there's that kind of opportunity for people if they want to just dip their toe in it. And then you also have another opportunity or other opportunities for people who are like, this is all I want to do is my life. And
Mm.
I think, I guess for me, I would say to a parent, like, just make sure that if you find out that when you're getting involved with something, that there's somebody who's saying, look, you have to be here all the time, and this is going to be a commitment, and like it's going to be 50 hours every week, and like right off the bat, and if that's not comfortable, then don't get into it. You know what I mean? Like, just find your comfort level
Mhm.
for it, and there are places that'll let you do a little bit first, and then if it's good, and you get the bug, as I mean, I'm sure all of us did because we're here, right, on the panel for
Mhm.
this. At some point, we all got the bug, right? And you want to dive into more. I don't know. I think it's better when it comes from the child wanting to really, pursue it, as opposed to, hey, you should go do this, and it's a commitment. You should, you're going to do this for
Mhm.
3 months, and I know you may not like it along the way, but if you don't, then you got to stick with it till the end. I think that doesn't end up real well usually.
Mhm. Yep.
So anytime you get an opportunity to talk to whoever's involved and what they're doing, and just find out like what is the commitment? Is this something that is major, or can I just do it a little bit? And I think that's a key to starting it,
Mhm.
and deciding whether or not it's for you.
Definitely. And maybe don't try to avoid getting cast as your kid getting cast in the lead if they're not sure they want to do
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, because we all
to be
are
fair to
quite
Mike,
aware of how well strong arming works to
yeah.
children.
To be fair, Mike knew better because he's been around theater because I'm around it, so he knew what was going to happen if he got whatever. So he was very much aware of it. So he knew what he
That's
was getting
good.
into. But again, he was kind of hoping some of his bros would be with him, and nobody came, so it was just him, and he suffered through it. But in elementary school, it's like I don't want to hang out with all the girls, so. Later on,
Yeah.
that might be different. But in elementary school, yeah, you know.
How about you, Katrina? I know that just from our personal interactions, you do both the theater side and the dance side. So what do you think on that? So,
I think Jake's point about the understanding the commitment is probably the biggest thing that I always recommend, for parents and for performers to understand is just, it's, I would liken it to, a sports team that is dependent on the player being there to be a part of the team. A show or a dance troupe or whatever is dependent on the performer being there, you know, for the rehearsals, for the
mhm,
performances. Otherwise, everything falls apart. And just having that conversation with the kid, and even, I've used the analogy with parents before, like, look back at your calendar for this time last year with your kid and
mhm,
say, look at all these things that we did that we might not be able to do this year
mhm,
because if you commit to this show, and just, talk through that balance with them.
mhm,
I would also say, just as a parent, to talk with the producer or production team to get, like Jake was saying, an understanding of the commitment. Like, are we going to have to be there 5 or 6 nights every week, or is this a 2 nights a week,
mhm,
a couple hours kind of thing? And then also, the more and more into it you get, even if your child is in equity or isn't, headed that direction or isn't looking at, a union card or anything like that, familiarize yourself with your state's youth labor laws and equity laws and things like that, just to understand, that, you know, whether a theater is kind of skirting rules when it comes to how long they are keeping the kids there late into the
Mhm.
night when they have school the next morning and things like that, just to find a really good fit if this is something that your kid really wants to pursue.
Now, on the dance side of things, uh, fortunately or unfortunately, my mother has been recently watching this TV show that I think a few of us might have been heard of called Dance Moms.
Mhm.
um, where, you have these kids in dance rehearsal and like that kind of thing. So like as a dancer, because that's obviously a like huge show. And it was very popular when it was on. Um, and I personally, as a performer, feel like it's an example of toxic performance. Absolutely. Um, is that something that parents should expect on their end? Like that kind of commitment? Because obviously the moms are always there, they're
Yeah.
always involved, they're voicing their opinions. Like, is that something you should expect to have to do?
Well, reality TV is an interesting beast. I have
Hmm.
a few friends in various aspects that have declined to do reality TV because all of the contracts that you sign basically says that they can take the recordings and like
Chapel that.
snip it and piece together whatever they want, however they want to fit their narrative, even if that
Mhm.
was not
Hmm.
your intent when, these words, in
Hmm.
different times were said. And so I think that that show and TV in general tends to feed off of like the drama of
Hmm.
dance and theater and things like that. I joke there's no drama without drama, but it kind of feeds off of that, like uses that almost like the clickbaity aspect to
Hmm.
draw in an audience. And I've worked, so Dance Moms features what is known as a competition school. If anybody knows, obviously there's uh, global nationwide dance competition circuits run by several organizations, and dance schools travel to compete in these. I primarily work with non competition schools. I have opinions, but competitions are it's kind of like the sports of dance. If your kid thrives on competing and winning, or just having something that pushes them a little bit harder and a little bit further with like
Hmm.
some sort of prize, then that's a good fit for them. I was raised in a non-competition school, and I primarily, like I said, work in non-competition schools. But I do work in the theater world with
Hmm.
competition dancers, and it's always finding that balance of time because
Hmm.
with the competition circuit, they're just every single weekend they're
Mhm.
at a competition or they're at the studio, and it's just that's definitely probably a bigger commitment when you're talking about something
Hmm.
like that. And
So, do you think that dancers should start to see if they even really like to dance before getting
I
into something like that?
Yeah, I would definitely probably suggest like starting out with some like just classes to make some friends and just
Hmm.
get into the base technique of it.
Hmm.
And you can do that at a school that does competitions. Usually they have a competition team. You do not have to be
Hmm.
a member of the team to attend
Mm,
classes. So you
okay.
can just take a few classes, see if you're into it. If all of their friends are on the competition team, they might want to do that.
Hmm.
And it's like joining the softball team with all of their friends, kind of thing, and see where their passion leads them. It could be to competitions, it could be to the local community theater or the school play.
Definitely. Right. And Charles, I didn't forget about you. I know I got kind of out on a tangent, but I, I, you obviously see both sides. You're the parent and you're the spouse, but you also work in it as a parent. So what do you have to add?
I Well, I think for at least for my kids specifically, a lot of it came from them seeing other people doing it and having fun. I think, I think it was Greg who said, like, it's really about you've got to have fun with this. This has to be a thing you enjoy. And that is the thing that, knowing kids who are going to have anxiety and in a lot of situations, making sure that they remember, wait, this is supposed to be fun. And if it stops being fun, maybe we should rethink how what your interaction is with it. Right.
Mhm,
And so for us, like I said, my second kid, who's in his fourth year in college right now in creative writing, and he did a few things where he was on stage when he was younger because that was kind of the mode of where their interactions were with the shows my wife was directing, or at least at their school.
mhm,
And kind of quickly realized, like, I'm not super comfortable on stage. It's not my I can't stand it, but I much prefer to be backstage making things work, getting basically functioning as a stage manager, helping make props, those sorts of things. And I
mhm,
think that really just letting them find it is much more about a much more healthy way for them to get there. Um, I feel so far I have been lucky that none of my kids have been athletic in a way that prompts them to really be competitive with things. So, like, the kid in college did a number of years of swim, and he did swim meets, and they were miserable, and I could not stand going to them.
mhm.
It was great exercise for him, and he was never super competitive with it, but he had a good time with it. But I was like, okay, I think there's certainly a value in it being something you can enjoy and have fun at. And if your personality isn't that type of competitive, to me, I think that's a much healthier worldview around how to interact with either the arts or anything you're doing. I think that, one of the challenges that I've seen from things like the competitive dance or so much of kids' sports ends up being that there is a whole economy built around fostering that competition and fostering that process so that there is more money that can be eked out into a system. And where does that actually end up for them? Are they fulfilled in that? And are they actually moving towards something that they feel like they have a career in, right? And like, I fully expect at least the three adult kids, I can't say for the little guy yet, to continue to be involved in theater in some capacity over the
Mhm.
years. And like, my daughter at 19 has gone through and is applying, and we're waiting on all the results and the money for all of the musical theater programs. And so she is planning on being very involved. That is very much her dream and her passion. Her older
Mhm.
siblings love it and are involved with it and love theater, but it's not necessarily where they're planning on spending every part of every day. But I think it really gave them a lot to build on for whatever they're doing, right? Like, the oldest is working in the sciences and, does organic chemistry every day to test water. But they also have an artist soul about things, and really that humanity, I think, helps them so much. Uh, so for me, I think really it's about find something you can find joy in, and something that builds that empathy and ability to relate to other people.
Definitely. Now, as a parent, I know you talk about you've made props and stages, and is that something a parent should expect to have to do?
I don't think should expect to have to. I think so. I would say 75% at least of the commitment for doing all of those things has come from being the spouse of a director more so than the parent of the kid in the show.
Mm,
Um, now, have really enjoyed doing some of those things, particularly on things where where the kids have been involved. But so much has been very much tied to being the spouse of the director more so than the parent of the kid.
Okay.
and
Okay.
and they are things that I enjoy, right?
Mhm.
As somebody who enjoys theater itself and is involved in my own aspect of things through puppetry. There's a lot of those things that that's kind of why I've always said I love puppetry, is that it hits all those aspects of writing and music and theater and creating and performing and all those things. You tend to have to do all of them. So
Mhm.
a lot of that creation for theater for the kids allows me another outlet.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm thankful for it, and sometimes I'm less so.
Yeah, and where I'd kind of like to also kind of tag off on this is you all touched on it a little bit, but I really kind of this is the part that really gets me because we've all seen the I'm living my life through my kid.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to kind of go on the reverse of that because Dance Moms kind of covers the negative side. But for each of you, more leaning more towards the parent side, what do you do when your kid is like on that cusp where you're like, I think I'm into it, but I don't know if I'm into it. Where is that line for you between figuring out that yes, this is what they want and want to do, but they just need a little encouragement, and the oh my god, I'm shoving my kid into something they don't want to do? Where do you find that line? Either as a teacher or as a parent, whoever wants to. I'll let y'all decide who wants to talk on that.
As somebody whose daughter did a lot of extra work over a few years here in Atlanta, and really was wanting to be professional about it. She likes to think about things professionally. I felt like, for the most part, my job as a parent was rarely to push them and more to be the voice of reason, to say, okay, let's pull back. I've seen it with other families, other kids, where they're like, oh, I enjoy this, so I want to sign up to do these three more things. I'm like, you're overcommitting yourself, and you're going to burn yourself out. So as a parent, my job is much less about pushing and more about enabling them, and then also pulling them back and say, okay, let's
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure we're not gonna burn ourselves out while we're 17, instead of
Mm-hmm.
wait till you're 40 like the rest of us.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
See,
that fine line of you think they're giving up too soon,
Mhm.
right?
well, and
You were
like
gonna say, Greg.
I was gonna say, my two kids are very different when it comes to their personalities. Like Xander is very, like, he's very like in his own head all the time, whereas Mars is very focused on the task. So Mars is my youngest, and that's the one I'm always like having to navigate the drama of the interpersonal stuff and all of that stuff, and having to play it more coy, being like, it's cool, like, and pulling that anxiety back that comes along with that. Whereas with Xander, I'm like, if you don't put your freaking shoes on, man, I swear to God, they're gonna kick you out of the show. And you wrote it, and it's like these are the, it's like that's the difference. So it's like Xander needs a little bit more reassurance that everything is okay. And he's very talented, but he also has expressed it like after high school, he doesn't want to do any traditional theater. He wants to go do weird punk rock theater with his dad, which
I was gonna
warms
say, so he wants to work with you.
Shock.
it warms the cockles of my cold dead heart. But right now we're having to navigate like interpersonal high school stuff and things like that, where his insecurity is very high, whereas Mars
Mhm.
is like they rule the roost, and they so I'm in like two different rooms. So like I'm in the den, and I'm like, hey Mars, it's cool. Living room, like, buddy, you gotta focus up on this, and it's like you got to win it for the giver, but also take it easy, kid. And it's like it's really feeling their personality, I feel, um and where they are in that moment. Because like I really do think that anybody who wants to do something, if they want it enough, they'll do it. And as their parent, I'm just gonna do everything I can to make sure it happens. I'm gonna work my connections. I'm gonna like the wizard robe they gave Xander for She Kills Monsters was trash. So Amy made a wizard robe. It's cool. It only cost $200 to make, and they gave him, a free one, but whatever. It's that kind of it's that kind of just like being able to pivot and like move around the situation to figure out like in this moment Xander's he wants it, but he can't see how much he wants it. Whereas Mars, it's like Mars, you need to you have it, so you need to just like, and these kids aren't you, so stop being upset that they're not taking it as seriously. And it really is just a matter of knowing your kid, but also looking at the opportunity that lays before him. Like, is this opportunity going to serve them? Like Xander opted not to do his senior class musical because he doesn't like the Adams Family. Because, like I always say, if you're going to do La Cage aux Folles, just do La Cage aux Folles. Don't do the Adams Family.
Oh.
But and he's like he doesn't like it. There's no role in it for him. He's like, I'm just gonna opt and go do the Scarecrow at the Playhouse, and making that choice was a big thing for him because he wanted to be with his friends. It's his last show at high school, and all of that. But like we sat and we talked about it for a very long time, and ultimately I left it up to him, and that it's knowing, it's trusting them, it's trusting that and it's trusting yourself that you know them enough to do what needs to be done, I guess.
Yeah, it's that knowing who your kid is so huge, and that recognition that they're not you, you're not them, but
Yeah.
you have some insights, but really just knowing which kid is doing which things in which way is huge as a parent, and I feel like from the perspective I get as the spouse of the educator, that the educator appreciates it if the parents are not the ones that are that they're encouraging the kids, but that they are really aware of who the kids are, because it's harder to know all of those kids in your class or all of those kids in your show in that way and figure out how to manage it. So being, for me, it's always it does go back to that. Like, I know my kid, I know this is really not going to serve you. I know this sounds cool because somebody came and asked you, hey, will you be in this show? But you remember the last time you worked with this director and they really grated on your nerves after a month of rehearsals. How do you figure out how those things go? And like you say, the kids know what they're doing, and that is a huge part.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Jake, as both parent and educator? That I'm sure you see this all that time. That kid's got potential, but he's just needs encouragement. For you, where do you see that line of encouragement versus go?
Well, I was I played cello for 6 years from third grade to ninth grade, and I quit in ninth grade because I didn't want to do orchestra anymore. And my orchestra director pulled me into his office and berated me for an hour and told me that I'm ruining my life and that I'll regret this forever. And it was a one-on-one long conversation about you can't quit and so forth. And when I became an educator, I realized that is not the approach that I would like to take for that at all. In fact, I probably almost never even probably should encourage more maybe than I do, just because if unless they come to me and say they want to do it, I'm just like, yeah, do whatever you like. I don't know. I think like what Charles was saying, and Greg, did you say your eldest, his name's Xander?
Yes.
Yeah, so is mine. That's really interesting. My
Buffy
is also named Xander.
generation.
I know, right? It's pretty cool.
It really is a Buffy generation thing.
I mean, I'm not gonna.
Right?
I was a bastard to name my kid Alexander G. Bell, so
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah,
he kind of
he's
hates
Alexander
me, so.
too.
Yeah.
But
So when he puts you in a home, you know you had it coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're circling. All the comments are circling around the same thing, and that is that when a kid comes and they say they're interested in theater, and you just go, okay, cool, and then you just kind of you're along for their ride, not anyone else's. You're just like, if you want to keep doing this, then I will give you all of these wonderful tools to play with. And I mean, literally tools sometimes, with tech, but like also just acting tools and other things. If you want to make this something that is, a college thing or a career thing, I will help you along the way there. Or if you're just doing this for funsies and, and that's it, cool as well. We'll let you stick around for a while and that's it. I think it's really, just at least for me, we have a large program here. We probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of, we have 14 different theater classes and probably about 200, 250 students in the program.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
In classes and other things after school. It's just massive.
That's amazing.
It's not bragging, just letting you know, like that is, it's really large.
That's cool.
Are you
And it's
a
really cool.
magnet
We
school
have
or regular?
what's that?
Are you a magnet
Sorry.
school? Magnet
No, not a
school or
magnet
regular?
school. No, we just developed it over the
That's
years
great.
and got it bigger every year. And yeah, we have about population of about 1,600 at the school. So we have a lot. It's just big, and so big that we have to run two shows at once with two directors because that's that much people that want to come out. So, like as to Charles's point, like knowing each kid, very difficult because it's a lot of kids to keep track of. So, it's really just have them come to you. I have a lot that are just like, this is I'm just doing this because I didn't want to take ROTC. This was a better option. I'm like, okay, great. I understand. You're just here for just for okay. Maybe you learn a few things. And I have other kids that are like, this is my major. I'm going to school for it. I'm hoping someday to be professional, and this is my thing. And I think it's really cool, honestly, to I don't know. As a parent, I guess my oldest is only 10, so he's not quite there of the choosing what he wants to make path as much yet, but it's coming, and I I am very much sitting back and just kind of finding out and see what you like. I don't know. I don't have any. I think it's the best way to parent, not to tell people how to parent, but to just like watch your kid and feed off them a little bit, and then encourage where you need to, and then maybe push in if they're just like I don't know. Say I encourage, but I wouldn't just like force anything.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right way to go. They got to own it.
And I,
You know?
and I think so much like the thrill of having been on stage and having an audience react and respond is usually enough of a your kids are getting when you're a performer like that, if that's not feeding you enough, then you already know you're not going to be the one who's going to enjoy it, right? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's and you usually
But
don't
like we
need
have,
that push once that's happened. Once
yeah.
you've got that, you experience it. It's like, oh, okay, yeah,
Mhm.
Well, like four times a year we do these things called coffee houses, which are kind of like open mic ish kind of thing, but for theater.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so they can, especially if they've never been cast. Let's say they go out for auditions and they don't get cast, which sometimes happens.
Yeah.
They really want to perform in front of anybody and they want to see what that's like. Well, we got four times a year where you can just get your friends together. There's no, it's not an audition. You screen it, and as long as it's prepared, you're in the show. Done.
Mm.
So then they get to do it in front of an audience, and that's it. And then they can get that feeling of like, oh, okay, without having to commit or whatever. You know what I mean? They get a
yeah.
taste once again, like I said before. And some kids go from that and go, oh, I'd like to do another one of those, maybe for real. And or they don't get it, like you said, Charles. They get up there like, yeah, that was terrible. I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. You do it. You figure it out.
Yeah. And Katrina,
And
I'm going to do the same thing Sarah did, is tap on you on the dance side as well, because there is so much more physical requirement in dance and learning to dance. What do you do with those kids where they're not sure, but you think they've got potential, or you think they don't? How do you walk that?
I definitely just encourage them to try their hardest. I mean, especially when you're taking kids, and crossing between dance and theater and dance and performance and things like that. Half the time, one of the things I stress to kids is, you know, just feel the music. Like you can, most everyone has some sort of rhythm, and most
Mhm.
everyone can memorize steps. So it's just, feel that rhythm, find that rhythm, and then it's all in the emotion, and just stress the emotion to them, and just like, to use an analogy, fake it till you make it is one of my favorite things to tell kids. If they're like scared, that they're gonna forget the steps, I'm like, that's okay. The audience doesn't know that you forgot the steps as long as your face says you didn't forget the steps. And just, encourage them to just keep trying and trying and trying, because it does get easier,
Sure.
and just stress that to them, that if this is something that, after those, if they stumble but still, push through, it does get easier if that's something
Right.
that they find that they love.
Now, we rapidly have come up on almost time, but there's one more question that I wanted to get to. But On a personal side of things, as somebody who is a performer, I am not a parent. The closest I've ever got is being a nanny. Uh, make sure that your kid is not just feeling like the fear of rejection because by not doing things, because that was an issue with me. Now, um I did performance from a very young age. I actually started in the dance realm. I've told said it before, but I started out at Ballet Des Moines, which was uh, a Russian ballet studio, which then turned into Ballet Iowa, and then went belly up because the director was used to Mother Russia paying for everything. But I did that for several years to the point where I was getting to the point of becoming junior company and all of that. And when that was just rapidly taken away from me, that was a shock to the system for me. And unfortunately, there was not just a great fit for dance because Katrina, as I'm sure you're aware, coming from a dance aspect, Russian ballet and American ballet are not similar at all. And it was just I was in Des Moines, Iowa. There was not a great alternative. So mom put me in lots of camps and singing, and I got really involved with singing to the point where I wanted to be a vocal major. But I loved all sorts of performing arts, and I hated gym and decided because Iowa had this handy law that if you were in three performing arts classes, you didn't have to take gym. So, what did Sarah do? She joined band, and I enjoyed band. Don't get me wrong, we had an amazing jazz band at the time and stuff like that. And then, unfortunately, we lost our instructor. The instructor that came back was a jerk and actually tried to get me to quit band, which then just led me, my stubborn self, to say, I'm staying in band. um, but as that, what ended up happening as I got older was I found because I was so gung ho that actually turned off a lot of my instructors and stuff like that. And they started just flat out rejecting me. And I don't know why, and that was sad. I went to private school, so keep that in mind. But I never got the roles that I was auditioning for. I never got the solos that I wanted. And, I was in classes up the wazoo personally, so I knew it wasn't a matter of um, that I couldn't do them. It was a matter of, well, I didn't look the part, or they didn't like me, or whatever. So try to always encourage your children to say, well, maybe this isn't the best place for you, but don't completely give up on your dreams because you know what I did? I didn't end up going for that vocal major because even to this day, I can't get up and sing in a microphone to save my life. Can't do it because I freeze. So don't encourage. My mom didn't mean to because she never did, but it was a almost don't she wasn't a fine arts person other than dance, so she didn't know how to pull me out of the stage fright. So try to figure out how do you pull your kid out of the stage fright and make it fun again. Um, that being said, we're going to run a little over, but I do think it's really important to talk about how, as parents, can you help your child handle the auditions and the inevitable rejection of your parts. And Jake, you are a teacher, so I'm sure you have to reject a lot of kids. How do you recommend a parent help them?
I this is yeah, this is one of the hardest things about the job is the fact that like I'm listening to you, Sarah, and I'm just like, oh man, I really want to give her something. Like I get little Sarah right now, like in my
Baby
programs and
Sarah.
everything. It's just
Yeah.
like, yeah. I think one of the big things that I try to tell my students and even the parents and just kind of give them this idea is that if let's say for instance we're doing Sweeney Todd right now and I cast 50, which is a
Mhm.
big number, but I still had about 80, 85 or so come out. So I cut about 35, and I told everybody, and of course, 50 is still not, there's like nine main characters, and then there's a lot of ensemble and little parts. And, if I could give every single person Mrs. Lovett and Sweeney and do a 50-person show where there's 25 pairs of Lovett and Sweeney, that
Mhm.
would be awesome. I would love to do
Mhm.
that. And sometimes that is, what they may deserve. Like that's the weird thing. It's like you might in some of these shows you tried out for, you might have been great for that role. The problem was that we can only have one of those in that part and the
Mhm.
director has to solve that puzzle. And it's the
Mhm.
puzzle that really is the thing. It's key, I think, that I tell them is I don't cast what I think you need. I cast what I think the show needs,
Mhm.
and it's not about what you should have gotten because if I just did it in a vacuum and what you got, I would have totally given you the lead.
Mhm.
I had to put somebody in the spot, and it worked out better that this person went here and this one here, and unfortunately this time you were out of the picture after all that was considered. And I think that helps personally for them to
Mhm.
hear that it wasn't like, oh, you didn't give my child this. It wasn't
Mhm.
about giving anybody anything. It was about, I had a puzzle to solve, and this is where
Mhm.
they all slotted right. And that's the way it ended up. And, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know if that helps, but it
No,
feels
it
like it
does.
does. I don't get a lot of complaints
Mhm.
very often from parents about casting. I get a few disgruntled looks, but they don't like send me angry emails saying, "How did you do this? Why?" I think also too. I mean, as again, you can hear we put on a lot of shows. Put about 6 or 7 shows a year. So I feel like the more you go out for, the more opportunities there are. It's less like I didn't get it that one time because
Mhm.
there's another one that's coming up right next. So that's it. Um, I also professor once. I'm sorry, I'm talking really long here.
You don't need
Professor
to
once told me this,
apologize.
and I feel like no, it's okay. The professor told me this once, and I think it's a great one. Is that he said that at any given time there are 25 people that are better than you. He says it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter. Like at any time, there's always 25 people better than you. He says it doesn't matter, like, where you fit on that. It's just like how many of those 25 came out for the audition. If none
Mhm.
of them came out, you're going to get the lead part. But if all of them come out, you're not going to get cast. That had nothing to do with you. It just happened to do with those 25 and how many showed up. And for me, when I heard that first time, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's not about me at all. I'm still a really good performer, but it's juxtaposed between all these other people. And I think that's again, these are all little things we put out there to make it happen. But that one really resonated with me because I've been an actor as well and gone out for stuff and thought, wow, that was a really good audition. I didn't get anything that time. Wow, I
Mhm.
thought I really nailed that one. Oh, okay, well. I guess the 25 came out this time, and it kind of feels like it makes more sense than saying I did a bad job, or I'm not a good performer. So, yeah.
Mhm. Greg.
Well, with my kids, it's always high drama all the time. So when the inevitable rejection does come through, it's a matter of talking through it. Again, most of the kids know each other, so like if one of my kids doesn't get the role they want, or they get a role that is in the show but not the one that they wanted, or not at all, like they I give them time to like mourn it, to really
Mm.
feel it,
Mhm.
and then after they've sat with it, usually even after that they're like, I still want to go see it because my friends are in it, and so they go, and then if they didn't like what the person did, they can snark. I let them be snarky if they have to be. But like a great example too is, it kind of to piggyback off of what Jake said, is that when Xander just did She Kills Monsters back in the fall, he wanted the role of Chuck, which is like the DM,
Yep.
and he got the Great Mage Steve. And if you're not familiar with the show, the whole bit with the Great Mage Steve is that he comes out on stage and basically dies immediately in a horrific way, and it's
I love that show,
hysterical.
by the way.
It's like and so when he came home, he was disappointed. He was like, "Yeah, I didn't get Chuck." And I was like, "Who got Chuck?" He's like, "Oh, Finn got Chuck." And I was like, "Oh, well, Finn's a good kid." And he's like, I was like, "What'd you get?" And he's like, "I got the Great Mage Steve." What does that mean? So we sat down and we watched a bootleg on YouTube, and he watched as this other guy got killed repeatedly on stage. He's like, "That's gonna be really funny." So then like we spent the whole time recognizing that the he could have been Chuck, but Finn couldn't have been Steve
Mm.
because Xander has the physical comedy that Finn just doesn't have. And then when the time for the show came, he came out on stage for his 4 deaths or whatever, his 3 or 4 deaths, and every subsequent opportunity, he got bigger and bigger applause and bigger laughs. And when they pulled his intestines out, the audience lost it, and it was very validating for him to recognize that even though he didn't get the lead role he wanted, he still was able
Had a
to really,
memorable part.
yeah, and he was still able to do that. And one of the biggest mantras that I say to my kids when they don't get the thing that they want is that you're 14. Like
Mhm.
you've got at least another 15 years where you can actively be in Mean Girls. Don't
Mhm.
worry, Regina George is on the horizon. Don't freak. Like you'll get it. Like
I would
Xander's.
have I would have wanted to be Janice all the way.
Well, and whatever the jam is, but that's like, and it's like, and if it doesn't come because there are bucket list roles that are I am too old for at this juncture that I never got to do, it doesn't change who you are as a performer. You still have great experiences, and it's just helping them focus on the experience that they're either having in the lesser role that they didn't want, or the role they wanted less. I guess is a better way to say that, or the experiences that like, okay, so you didn't get this. Let's go over here and try for this, and
Mhm.
that to me is just it's about exploring options and also recognizing that every opportunity that you have in theater is for learning. So if you didn't get it, well, what did you learn in that audition where you got rejected? There were 90 people and they only cast 30. Okay, well, that means 59 other people didn't get it either. You're among good company.
Mhm.
And keeping that perspective where it's not a personal thing, it's just sometimes the way the cookie crumbles.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How about you, Katrina?
So I was, especially off of that last point, I have this conversation a lot with some of the kids as that I work with as they're looking at moving from high school to either college or professional level. I have the big fish in a little pond versus big fish in a big pond conversation with them, especially if they're ones that are used to getting those lead roles in their school or whatever program they're a part of. I'm like, you are I preface it with like you are amazingly talented at what you do, and yes, you could obviously do this professionally. Just you know help them understand that rejection isn't necessarily a sign of their lack of skill. It is the sign of they are in good company with amazingly talented people, and when they had 50 girls show up for Janice, you know, they can only choose one. And just, at that young level, understand and appreciate and uplift their friend that did get Janice and help support them and recognize that. And then it helps them just kind of build a confidence in their own talent and skill to help them weather that rejection, just to look outside of themselves rather than internalize that rejection.
Okay. How about you, Charles?
Um, I think for one of the things that probably has helped my kids specifically is having mom who is a director, because mom can certainly talk through, look, this is how we cast the show. And I think to Jake's point, there's a lot of, you know, there is put the puzzle pieces together to get the right people, the best in the, you can't say, look, this person was I was better than that person at this role. Yes, but I needed this person in this role so this person can be here. And that is part of it. And then from an educational theater standpoint too, there's also, as an educator, you're like, look, I know if I give this person this role, it's going to help them grow in this way, and that is also going to help them, move from. So there are so many variables in what's being decided that it is not always just about you and what you did or didn't do in that audition room.
Mhm.
And also that process of letting them grieve the role, right, that they didn't get that they really wanted, and then going back and having that communal experience of theater where you are working as part of a team to tell a story. That part really, I think for a lot of the kids, it helps them, because once you get past that, okay, I didn't get what I wanted. Once you get a chance to kind of move past that, you get that, you go in and you're still having the theatrical experience. You are still interacting with other artists. You are still getting a chance to grow and to experience that, and you're able to take that to the next thing. And I think Greg made a really good point too about finding alternate venues. So for us, like, my uh that most of my kids, when they were going through school, like, they were staying with their school programs, right? My daughter, who, as she was going through, she was like, okay, I'm going to try with this group. I want to try with this group. I'm going to go to this community theater. I'm going to audition at this community theater, and experiencing those different directors and getting that feel for realizing that, yeah, in certain scenarios, you may get pigeonholed as, you're always going to be this little kid who was always this person. But if you've experience it more broadly, you get the chance to realize how many options there are out there, and that it's not all. Sometimes it is somebody's a jerk as a director and they didn't like you, and sometimes it may be that you totally screw up an audition. But for the most part, you play those numbers and you get that average out there, and you're going to experience more as a performer.
Definitely. So we are over on time.
Shocking.
So I know, right? This never happens, and I never write too many questions ever. I guess I want to give everybody an opportunity one more time to say, where can we find you? And I also would love, what is the one thing we didn't touch on this panel that you want parents to know about having a kid um, in the theater or performing arts? And um, Katrina, I'm gonna start with you.
I'm on most social media, I think, as KT Katrina. You can find me there if you care to follow me. If whatever, I don't know. Uh, for the one thing we didn't talk about, the only thing I would say is I feel like sometimes when parents look at either dance or theater or anything like that, suddenly they get a little bit worried at the dollar signs. And I think that one thing I would stress, especially as kids are just starting out, is there are so many free or very low cost options to give it a try and see how much you like it. The YMCA runs tap classes, or the library, or wherever, or your school runs a program that they may want to try, or the local community theater. Places like that that are either going to be no cost whatsoever or a very, very low cost. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on dance classes. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on headshots. I'd rather get a 8 by 10 printed at CVS that you took with your cell phone than a 2-year-old headshot of a 9-year-old because it looks nothing like them.
Hmm.
And you know, just keep that in mind. Don't let that feel like a stumbling block for a
Hmm.
family.
Charles.
You can find me, especially during con. You can find me in the puppetry track. You can find me online almost always as C Pillsbury or CH Pillsbury or Death by Puppets, which is my group. And I think the one thing that probably that I'm feeling very personally right now, as we are going through the waiting game after having done Unifieds, is, to Katrina's point, the dollar signs, and also starting that process. If you feel like your kid is really moving towards professional, is looking at what that college process is going to look starting in like 10th grade and kind of getting your ducks in a row, because that was the thing that hit us, was that so much of it comes up so quick that like the first rounds of pre-screen stuff is happening in November and September, and and that's a senior year thing that, like, if you're not already in it, you're already behind. um,
Mhm.
and oh my gosh, the cost of the programs. There are some that do great scholarships, and there's a plethora of programs out there, but oh, how many of these programs are looking like more than my first couple mortgage payments were? Yeah, not payments, mortgage, the whole thing. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Jake.
Sorry. Working on it. Sorry, my mute button was being funny.
It's okay.
I found what we're doing for if you're in the Atlanta area and you want to come see some of our shows. We are at midtowndrama.com, and you can buy tickets online there and so forth. Sweeney Todd is going to be the end of March, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 29th. So there's that's the next thing that's happening for us. For myself, I do have a podcast that I started last year called Theatrical Journey. It is interviews with alumni from my program and finding out what they've done since high school, theatrical or otherwise.
I like that.
And I did a first season, we'll call it, about 4 episodes. Then I got busy with doing this stuff, but I have a whole bunch more that is going to come out when I'm done with this show, probably. So but that is my podcast that I have, and a lot of that, to dovetail into it, is a lot of the conversation about, what happened in high school, how are they successful now, like how do they navigate some of these waters of rejection and so forth that we've been talking about. A lot of those conversations go into that, and I think the most important thing that I got from conversations from my alumni who are scattered throughout, doing different things, is that they said that the process never ends for this. In other words, there's never a time where you've made it and now you are a performer and there's no more work to be done. And I think that was, I think it just there's no such thing as like, and I'm here. That's it. I'm good. You know what I mean? It never
I've made it.
stops. The
You never
process,
feel it.
yeah, the process never stops. I think that's the important thing, that you're always trying to perfect yourself as a performer, as a good person. It's really, that above anything else is the best piece of advice for anybody who feels like, but I haven't been able to get X, whatever it might be. Is like you're still in the process, as a lot of you have been saying, and actually the process is probably more important than the product, as it always is. That is the best part of theater, I think, is not the final show, but the rehearsal that got you there. That's the real fun growth and experience, and finding that moment for the first time, and figuring out, say like recently, figuring out how to make the trap door work, for Sweeney. And it was like, yeah, it was a really, it's frustrating, but we finally got it. We're like, yes, we got it. That kind of stuff will always, in my mind, be better than whatever happens when people come and watch it. So.
And Greg.
I'm Greg Bell, pretty much everywhere. I run Bloody Mayhem Theatrical out of Baltimore, Maryland. We do lots of horror things and shadowcasty things and wacky mayhem-like things. Also working with a company called Mott and Bailey. This October, if you're in Baltimore, come see our production of Hamlet that is called Hamlet and the Black Parade, which will have a mashup of My Chemical Romance and Hamlet. Should be pretty cool.
I want to go see it so bad.
It's gonna be really cool.
My Chemical Hamlet, I'm there.
And then I also work with a group called the WRPG, which is we do live plays of different kinds of role-playing games. Like Planar Taxi is our flagship show, which is a 80s sitcom-based RPG, and a thing called the Paw Paw League, which is an RPG based on the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast. And then there's our Port Rig, which is basically, if you like Murder She Wrote and you like the Golden Girls, and you like Scotland, that's what this RPG is. It's old ladies solving crimes while drinking tea. It's pretty fun, actually. That happens every month. We do one episode every month for that. You can find those online as well with the WRPG on YouTube. Um, if you want to check out some good children's theater locally, again, Children's Playhouse of Maryland, where you could see my son Xander play the Scarecrow in a couple. Actually, they open next weekend. If you want to go see Beetlejuice Jr. at Perry Hall Middle, my youngest is playing Delia Dietz. She's very excited about that. And of course, there's lots of good local theater in this children's theater in this area. So if you hit me up on the Dragon Con Theater Performers group, I will happily give you some inside scoop on different areas that are around. If you're interested in getting your child involved in things like that, I can definitely send you some information for a lot of different local children's groups because my children have been in many of them. um, as far as a piece of advice, I would say it's kind of twofold. The biggest thing I can say is I would always encourage you to have your children do something performing at least once, at least like something, because it teaches empathy, it teaches them compassion, it teaches them how to think about themselves. But I am going to say, as a parent, be careful as you're advocating for your kid that you're not dance momming for your kid. It's important to make sure that you're recognizing that the whole process, as everyone has said here, is it's a group effort, it's a puzzle. Um, so while you may feel a certain way about it, make sure that you're not letting those feelings go onto your kid. I watch it happen a lot with other kids. I try and watch it with myself because I want to make sure that my kids are always learning and growing in the process. But I see a lot of other parents that are advocating for their kids in a hurtful way, and it's not really helping their children get more out of the theater. It's just making them more reticent to really move and change as they need to grow as a performer because you're not always the lead, you're not always the funny one. Sometimes you're the third tree in the back, and that's how it works sometimes. So please just be careful with that. As a parent, it's something I always, like I say to other parents, it's something I always say to myself before I have to go and have a conversation with any director or teacher of theater to make sure I'm not being overbearing with my own experience and their own experience in that moment. So.
Gary, I know where to find you, but where can everybody else?
Well, you can find me here as part of the Dragon Con Theater Performing Arts Lovers unofficial group with that lovely human being. Hopefully, I'm pointing in the direction right over there. Uh, you can find me as the director of Good to Be a Geek Media, where I'm a producer and host of several podcasts, including a podcast of Amontillado, a horror podcast.
I love that name.
I was so happy no one got to that before me.
That's such a great name.
You can also find me as the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics track at Dragon Con. So if I'm not on a theater panel at Dragon Con, you can find me in room M103 to M105.
Definitely. As far as where you can find me, you can always find me at Dragon Con Theater and Performing Arts Lovers Unofficial. We are all over social media. We got Instagram. We've got Blue Sky now. But primarily, we are a Facebook group. And you can always find me on the Facebook group. Um, I again theoretically have my own podcast called Fandom Input Lights Podcast that will be restarting soon as we are done with the submission process for Dragon Con because at Dragon Con that's where you can find me 9 times out of 10 is at a theater event. Um and I love doing them. Uh, but that being said, you can find the group. Our next panel is on March 10th, reviving the classics, where we're going to talk about reviving classic theater. We also got a couple other things planned tentatively for March, including a Women's History Month, where we're going to be talking about our favorite heroines from the stage and what they can teach us about being women. We're also either planning on doing it. It's probably going to end up being April, but we're going to do our now annual Battle of the Fictional Musicals to determine what's the best fictional musical of them all. But if you're interested in being any of those, reach out to me or reach out to Gary. And until next time, we're gonna say
Sweetie Todd.
adieu.
Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd is not a fictional musical; it's an actual musical. I think
But I'm with
last.
you, sir.
I believe
Last year,
last.
that's exactly right. That was last year anyway.
Uh,
Anyway,
but
sorry.
no, that's coming up later.
Yeah,
The
that's
one you
right.
were on, that was what is Dragon Con's
That's a
favorite
different one.
musical.
That's a different
Yes.
one. That's different.
But no, I believe last year the winner of fictional musicals, we did it twice. We did a revenge edition
Mm.
as well, and the first one was uh, the Planet of the Apes one from The
Yes.
Simpsons, and then the second one was Bombshell from Smash.
Yay!
So
Woo.
yeah, we'll see who comes out supreme this year, and yeah, if you're interested in being on that, let me know. Until later, though, I think we're gonna all say adieu.
Uh,
Bye.
Adieu. Jazz hands, everybody. Jazz hands.
Jasmine. We're still on.